Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope everybody is doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to hit hard on this subject, looking furthermore into who is God. If you've been following along and catching up on those other videos, we've looked at the omniscience, which is his all-knowing, omnipresence, which God is everywhere, and his omnipotence, which is God being all-powerful. Okay, and again, these are attributes that must fit God in order for God to be God, right? And so today we're going to kind of lump sum all of those into one category, and that is his sovereignty. Okay, big word. We're going to dive into his meaning. Don't panic. Okay, so looking at his sovereignty, understanding the sovereignty of God. Again, in order for God to be God, he must be sovereign. So what does it mean to be sovereign, right? Well, his sovereignty concerns of his rule and rule over his creation and the affairs of men. Okay, so God rules. God is in control. God is there. God is just simply in control, right? God is at the helm and he is running the show. He is or has the authority and rule over all of the creation and the affairs of men, right? So to put it in even a simpler term, right? Everything that happens to you, to me, around us in this world, in this life, is because of two things. Either God caused it or God allowed it. Okay, now stick with me. Okay, that it's gonna be a tough pill to swallow for a bit, but we're gonna fight through this. Okay, God is either God's sovereignty, him allowing things to happen around us. Everything that happens around us is because he either caused it or he allowed it. Okay, so then let's go further into it, right? When we're looking at God's sovereignty and looking at his rule, we also have to understand that God does what he pleases, okay? Scripture to back this up, right? Psalm 24 verse 1 tells us that the earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof, the world, and they that dwell in it, right? So God, who not only created the universe and the galaxies and the globe, the planets, all of that, not only is his creation his, but what he's created within, right, is his as well. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Okay, so essentially everything is God's property. Right, now we have our own things, and we have a home, we have building, shelter, we have clothes, we have all these kinds of things, but understand that everything that is of the world, right, God owns. It's his. It was his before it became ours, right? And so not only did he create the animals, but the animals are his. Not only did he create the land and the soil, the trees and the creation, but it's also his, okay? So God owns it. God owns his creation, and he created his creation, if that makes sense, right? So looking at his sovereignty, we see that he does what he pleases. So essentially, God is going to do what he wants, when he wants, how he wants. Again, tough pill to swallow. Don't click off. I know it's getting a little tough, but this is what truth does. It's going to challenge you just a bit. Okay, so God is sovereign, not only because he does what he pleases and his rule over creation and the affairs of man, but also understand that there's nothing that happens. Again, this ties back to his knowingness, right? God knowing everything and God knowing everything about everything. This also means that there's nothing that gets through the fingers of God or slips through the fingers of God that God is unaware of, right? So things that happen to you, things that happen to me, things that happen around us, God not only knows about, but made the decision to approve or deny, right? So what God keeps from us is for a purpose. What God allows is for a purpose, right? Again, going back to his all-knowingness, and all powerful. Listen, it's all with a purpose. God will never do anything that doesn't carry a purpose behind it, even if we cannot see it. Okay, I want you to paint this picture with me for a second, right? When we're looking at God rules, right, and we're looking at God being sovereign, okay, it's much like, I have a home. Just for instance, let's just say, or we'll switch it. You have a home, right? You have a home, you have your own crib, you have your own place, right? You decorated it, you designed it how you wanted. And, I come in as a guest and I just look around and see what you have going on, right? You are the ruler of your home. Okay, so because you're the ruler of your home, you set the instructions of the home, you set the decor of the home, you set how your home wants to look, how it fits for you, what the design, what you want, what pleases you. You have it all over there, right? That's your home, your humble abode. But this is where we can sometimes mess up, because we think that we can just come into other people's homes and tell them, right, how things should be, when we never bought the home. So it's kind of like you, again, owning a home, and you have your home decor and all that good stuff. And I just kind of waltz in and I see and look around. I'm like, you know, that picture doesn't belong there, belongs there. And the furniture color, it's just disgusting. It's terrible. Just go ahead and get that out the way. And yeah, your dining sets and how everything is just put together, it's just awful. Well, how about your home rules, right? I just come in and look at your home rules, and I just kind of get a pencil and paper and just start making up new rules to put in your home, because I think that this is how your home should be. And it doesn't matter what you think, even though you're the home owner, because I'm here and I'm just going to give you a new rule. It does not work like that with God. Okay, when God rules, right, it doesn't matter how we feel about it. It's God's rule. Okay, God's rule, God's authority. So God does what he wants, when he wants, how he wants. Now this could sound a little harsh and come off the top a little kind of crazy, right? But there's reason for it. Okay, there's multiple reasons for it, but we're going to get into a couple of questions that will help us kind of understand the deeper reasonings of this, right? So understanding his sovereignty, we also see that there's no detail overlooked. Okay, so there's no detail about our lives, in our lives, through our lives, for our lives, that escapes God. So God sees it. Okay, God sees you when you don't think anyone sees you. God hears you when you don't think anybody can hear you, right? God is with you even when you think no one around you is with you. Even if you don't see anybody physically around with you, God is with you. God is aware. God knows. He just knows every detail there is to know about you, just like he knows about me and others around you. Okay, so then here comes one of two big money questions. Okay, number one, why do my decisions matter? Okay, I mean, let's be honest, right? If this God is to be all-knowing and all-powerful and everywhere, okay, why do my decisions matter? Why should I care why should he care what I do, or why should I care what I do if all of it's just going to be determined and decided for me anyway, right? Because God is sovereign, so he's just going to do what he wants, right? So let's look at this, right? God is sovereign, and our free choice are like two roads that never intersect. Okay, Dr. Tony Evans leaves us with an amazing description of this for his thoughts on such a question. God's sovereignty and our free will and free choice are two roads that never intersect. So meaning, in God's sovereignty, God has a destination. And in the destination of God, God is going to get there regardless, whether it's with you, whether it's without you, whether it's against your feelings, aligned with your feelings. God is going to get to his destination regardless. But our decisions will determine how he chooses to go about getting to that destination. Okay, let me put it this way with the quote he leaves. He says, he allows you to make choices. Your choices will not determine whether God winds up where he wants to go. He will arrive at his destination, but your choices affect which route he takes. Okay, so we're still being given free will and free choice, right? So that will never intersect with the sovereignty of God. So essentially, God has his path, God has his road, God has his destination that he wants to do, whether it's in your life, around your life, he has a destination. But your decisions will determine the route he takes. So maybe you decide not to do this or not to do that, right? That doesn't change the destination that God has, but it might change how he goes about it. Maybe he has to do something different, something more, something less, whatever it might be. His route to getting to that decision, getting to that destination could change based on our decisions. Okay, so then that's one. Okay, one question that we can make up. So our decisions still matter in the end because it's free choice and free will. It's just that our choices don't affect his destination, but affect the route he takes according to our decisions in our lives to get to a destination. Okay, so let's look at the second big money question. I'm sure this rambled and jumbled through your mind at some point while going through this. Okay, now stick with me. I know I've been talking for a minute. I'm wrapping it up. Listen, why does God allow evil? I know at some point it rambled in your mind. You had that thought that came across your mind. I mean, God being all knowing and all powerful and everywhere and all, he's just sovereign and all these things. So why does God allow evil? Right? Why did God not stop 9/11? Why did God allow the Holocaust? Why did God allow me to be physically or mentally abused? Why did God not step in and help me when I was in pain and in need? Why didn't God heal me of such a sickness that I've been dealing with for so long? Why it just seems like God is non-existent, God doesn't care. Why does he allow these things? Why does he allow evil? Why does he just allow so much bad to happen around us? And that is a phenomenal question, hands down. But let's look at this, right? There's two reasons that we can come up and come to conclusion with as to why God allows evil, okay? Number one, it proves his existence. Well, how does evil prove his existence? Well, let's look at it. If we're going to determine evil, we also have to understand what is good, right? We can't differentiate evil from good if we don't know what good is, okay? Now, we all have a sense of morality, right, in determining what's evil or what's good, right? All of us would probably unanimously agree that murder is evil, right? But there's a sense of morale there, right, that can draw us back to an original moral law or morality giver, right? So we have to be able to determine what's good to determine what's evil, right? So if there wasn't evil, right, then we really couldn't prove an existence of God in any kind of sort. Right? So then this leads us to understand that God, who we've renownedly announced and proclaimed of his goodness, he's good, so he must be the standard of good. So then this allows us to differentiate, okay, if God is the standard of good, then all things that God approves of and God declares to be good and God declares to be righteous, everything that is outside of that would be considered unrighteous or wrong or evil. Right? So in order to determine evil, we have to understand or determine what is good. So this proves the existence of God. But then secondly, he allows evil because we still have to make a choice. Okay? God doesn't want robots serving him. Okay? But God rather wants something else presented. That way we still have the opportunity, like we spoke of earlier, to make the choice to choose him, because love is about choosing, not forcing. Okay? So for you to love someone, you really want to be involved in them. That's something you want to do. If you're forced to love anybody, you would rather leave that relationship any kind of way you want. You will find a way out of that relationship almost at any cost, right? But God wants us to love him by choosing him and not being forced. Okay, so he allows evil because it proves his existence and that we are still given the room to choose him. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, this doesn't really make sense for my situation and for the pain I've been under, the stress and the distress and the craziness that I've been under. But I want you to hear this, and I'll end the video. This is really what I want you to hear. God's sovereignty is also important in the circumstances that we deal with, okay? Trust that God doesn't allow anything to happen to you that you couldn't recover from, you couldn't bear, and furthermore, that God would just allow it just to allow it, okay? I know that the worst things that may have happened to you were terrible and would have and easily are number one things that have caused so many other things in your life that have derailed so many issues. Right? You were verbally abused, physically abused, sexually abused. You were hurt, you were mistreated. You were backstabbed. You had no, your parents weren't in your life, right? Friends kept turning over on you. Whatever it might have been, right? Those are awful experiences and far worse than what I named. But understand that if God allows it, then God also has a solvent for what he allowed. For every problem, God has an answer. Ecclesiastes tells us that there's nothing new under the sun. So we have to understand that God, if God allowed it, then God also has a purpose for it, even when we can't see it. And no matter the amount of evil that happens to us, God also has the power to take what the enemy meant for evil in our lives and turn it for good. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I cannot wait to see you next video. But until then, peace.